Thank you so much for coming today. I'm so excited to share this information with you today. This is my first time doing a webinar jam, so I'm hoping that everything will run very smoothly. And if it doesn't, I'm planning on doing this once a month, so it should be better next month. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Heather Smith, and I know a lot of you. Some of you I don't know. I am an independent music teacher in Centerville, Utah. I am also a regional representative as well as an examiner for the Royal Conservatory. So before we begin, I would like to share my story. In 1998, I graduated with a degree in accounting. And I graduated from Maryville University in St. Louis, Missouri. And for my graduation present, my husband and I went to hear the St. Louis Symphony perform Ravel's Bolero. As I sat there in the hall and the symphony began to play, I felt this awakening in my soul. And at the same time, a sinking feeling in my heart as I realized I had just made a grave error. I had graduated with the wrong degree. What I should have graduated in was a music degree. But my course seemed set at that point. I had just spent the past 4 years working on this degree, and my family was relying on my income that an accounting degree would provide. So I felt a little bit stuck, but we moved back to Utah, and I worked for 6 years as a tax manager for both the Franklin Covey Company and also JCPenney Company, doing their tax and compliance department. After the birth of my third son, I decided to quit my job and stay home with him, and that's where I picked up piano lessons again. This course of action led me back to the university, where I earned 2 additional degrees, this time in music. So this whole webinar that I'm going to be sharing with you today are sharing the 2 things that I am familiar with: running a studio and also accounting. So I'm going to open up my slide to begin the presentation. Okay. So as a music teacher and running an independent music studio, I have found that having an accounting degree has been very useful. What I'm going to be talking about today are 3 topics: licenses, taxes, and budgets, along with a couple of other items as well. But to preface, I am not a CPA, and the things that I'm sharing with you today are not official tax advice. So please see a tax attorney or a CPA when you're making any decisions about your own business. Okay. Accounting records. What I have found that money is a subject that a lot of music teachers don't want to talk about. It makes them feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about money with their students or with their colleagues. But here is my strong advice. There's no reason to be embarrassed that you want to make money, that you're using your talents to earn an income. In fact, if you treat your studio like a business, it will actually make you become a better professional. And I think that your students deserve to have a teacher that takes their profession seriously, and that includes your finances. As a business owner, this is really important that you take care of your records, keep track of your income and your expenses. It might feel really overwhelming to many to keep track of your income and expenses. However, it will be even more overwhelming to you if you don't. I have some wonderful colleagues who filed their tax extensions that were due back in July. They filed their extensions and because they weren't ready to file their actual taxes, and they are frantically working on their taxes today, because today is the tax deadline, October 15th, for the extension. So most likely they are not on this call today. As a business owner, you need to keep careful records And as you see in this slide, there are 4 different pencils, so I thought I would give you 4 items to pay attention to. The first, have a system in place where you can keep track of your income. I use QuickBooks, and we're going to, I'm on the next slide, we're going to do a poll to see what you might use. The second, reconcile your bank account on a monthly basis. Third, have a dedicated banking account and credit cards. This is a really important one because if you don't have a dedicated banking account that's separate from your personal, that could cause a lot of trouble for you if you're ever audited by the IRS, or if you are, heaven forbid, if you are ever sued. Having the intermingling of your personal and your business accounts would put your personal assets at risk. And the fourth is back up your records. And I'm sort of embarrassed to share this information with you, but I'm going to. I knew better, but I was using QuickBooks and not backing up my records. I figured, yeah, it's already backing up automatically in my computer on QuickBooks. And that was totally fine until my computer crashed. And so in 2017, I lost a whole year's worth of records. And that was such a devastating experience for me. I spent several weeks having to re-entering all of the income, all of the tuition that I received, all of the expenses, going back to the bank accounts for the whole year, so that I could file my taxes. So it's really, really important to back up your records, and I do that now on a weekly basis. Okay, so we are going to do a poll. Let me get to the next slide here, an accounting system poll. I am very, very curious to see what systems you use. So I'm going to start this poll. I hope it works. And I hope you can see this. If I see answers coming in, then I'll know that it's working. Yay, it must be working. So what type of accounting system do you use to keep track of your income and expenses? I'll give you a couple, about 10 seconds to go through and answer. And then I'll share the results. And if you choose other, I would love if you share in the chat what that other is. I'm not as familiar with a lot of the programs. Okay, 5 more seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So it looks like a few of you are using QuickBooks. 25% of you are using Music Staff. 1% is using Music Teacher's Helper, Excel. A quarter of you are using Excel, and then almost 37% of you are using Other. So I'm looking in the chat. Ledger. Diane, I haven't used Ledger before. And Jill, I see MMS and QuickBooks. Nice. Great. And Barbara, I will answer your question as far as, yes, I am an LLC, but we're coming to that in just a minute, but thank you. All right. Operating budgets. An operating budget is like your roadmap. It shows you where you have been and where you expect to go. It gives you the information you need to make decisions on your business, as well as an insight on what you need to change in order to get you the results that you desire. And I do the accounting for my husband's business as well, and he's always on me on doing an operating budget. So I'm speaking to you and realizing that I actually need to do better in doing what I'm preaching to you. So I do an operating budget for my own studio. I need to do one for my husband's business as well. I'm going to show you an example of the operating budget that I do for my own studio. But an operating budget basically shows you how much you've spent in a certain period and how much you've brought in, and it helps you to predict what you plan on earning and spending in the future. This is a sample budget of my own studio. So in here, it shows the income. Now these numbers are fictitious. I did not put in the actual numbers, but the categories are real. These are exactly what I have in my own QuickBooks. As far as the income goes, the different type of classes that I offer, whether they're private or if they're group, also including the interest that you earn from your bank accounts. And then the expenses, some of those expenses, I'm not sure if you can see this very clearly. I'll just read a couple of them, including an alarm system. I do have an alarm system here at my house, credit card fees, gifts, liability insurance, permits, marketing, recitals, music that you purchase, sheet music, traveling, and utilities. So those are just some of the expenses that I use. So what I've done is I've included what was the amount for 2019, and then I put in an estimated budget on what I'm expecting to bring in 2020. And so going through here for 2020, for half of the year, I was able to do group classes. And this year I decided in September, I'm not teaching group classes. So my income was cut in half, but that's okay because other things were also dramatically cut, including travel. So I'm certainly not traveling as much as I had been in the past. You can also break this out annually, or sorry, monthly, so that you can actually have a cash flow and see where you, if you have the money to cover your monthly expenses. So you could break this out even further. I have done that for other organizations. This might be helpful for you for your own studio. Okay, this is also really good, having an actual, because that's what you will need when you are filing your taxes. Okay, on my spreadsheet, you saw that there were two items in the expenses, including business licenses and insurance. So business licenses and insurance are a couple of items that really shouldn't be overlooked when you're running your music studio in your home. And I'm going to go over each one of them in a little bit more detail to give you some information on why these are both pretty important to pay attention to. And the first is licensing. So business licenses are issued and administered by all levels of government, but the licenses that I'm going to be covering are pretty much those that are found in like your local businesses or your local government. If you don't have a business license and your city requires that you have it, you could be really jeopardizing yourself to some pretty hefty penalties and fees. So contact your city, your local government, and see if you have any business license requirements in your area. Some of the common names for these licenses include business license, home occupation permit, or a zoning permit. So any of those are the type of things you need to make sure that you have if you're operating in a home business. Where I live in Centerville, we used to have business licenses, but that stopped a couple of years ago. I'm not sure why. Diane, I know you and I live in the same city, so if you know why they stopped doing it, I would love to know. But they stopped requiring business licenses, but they didn't stop the requirement as far as zoning permits or zoning rules. So you'll want to find out, one, if you have to file a business license, and two, what the zoning requirements are. In my area, there are some strict zoning rules as far as having a home business, and my neighbors, my dear neighbors, make sure that I follow them to the T. So, Diane, I know that you teach pretty early, or at least you did, but in our city in Centerville, it does say that we are not allowed to operate our home business if it's before 7 a.m. or after 9 p.m. So I've made sure that for my neighbors, I am not starting teaching until 7 in the morning. There's also regulations on parking, and that's an important. Barbara Gill just, she wrote, her city doesn't require it. Barbara lived, yep, she just said in North Salt Lake. Yeah. So just watch what your zoning rules are and if there are licensing regulations where you live. Insurance. This is an important one. Just like having a business license, you really should have business insurance to cover your personal well-being, your financial well-being in case there is an accident. And I didn't put a poll, but I'm curious to know if any of you do have liability insurance. So if you do, I'd love if you just post that in the chat just so that I know if you already know about this or not. The most common type of business insurance, license insurance is called a general liability insurance. And that's a type of insurance specifically for a small business. Some of the risks that are covered if you have a liability insurance include bodily injury, property damage, medical payments, legal defense. While you aren't legally required to carry liability insurance, it's extremely risky if you don't. Having sufficient amount of liability insurance is important too. I suggest talking to your insurance agent and finding out the specifics for your policy. For years, I have 3 boys, and my third one wore me out, and I finally gave in. All 3 of them throughout their lives begged for a trampoline. And I always said, no, we are not getting a trampoline because they're dangerous. And finally, my third son, he wrote up this whole long declaration on why it is crucial for him to have a trampoline. And I caved and we got one. Not realizing, though, that having a trampoline in my backyard is an issue when you have a home studio and students coming in and out through my in my backyard to get into my studio entrance. So I spoke to our insurance agent, and he said, yes, that is a really important thing that you have that stated in your liability coverage. So the cost that I pay for my general liability insurance is $350 a year, which is about average for a home business liability coverage. A typical homeowner's insurance, we also have homeowners insurance, doesn't cover a lot of the business related aspects. So even if you have homeowners insurance, look into getting the general liability insurance as well. Okay, so here are some fun situations some are very similar to what has happened in my house, and some that are I exaggerated a little bit. Situations that a general liability insurance might cover. Example number 1, it's the one on the left with a TV. While you're interviewing a student and his mother, the student proceeds to do a cartwheel in your house and smashes your large television. Will that be covered by your insurance? And the answer is yes. General liability insurance will cover replacing damaged television. Example number 2, a student walks into your bathroom, trips on the rug, and breaks his arm, and his parents want you to cover the medical care. Will that be covered? And that's a yes. So the general liability insurance would cover the medical treatment. So are there any chat questions on this? I'm just looking here. It said, Barbara Gill wrote, I had to add it to my homeowner's insurance when she started doing Let's Play music. Okay, thank you. Going on to taxes. So when I told my husband that I was doing this presentation on taxes, he was like, Heather, that is the most boring topic that you could talk about. And so I told him it's not a problem. It'll be fine. I'll put in a comic to make it more humorous. And putting on my accounting hat as an accountant, I thought this was really hilarious. This comic is, If you can't read it, it says, I'd like to dedicate my next composition to an IRS agent who needs tangible evidence that a snowblower can be filed as a musical instrument deduction, which I thought was just so funny. Okay, let's go on. Forming a business. So before we talk about business taxes, it's important to know what kind of a business that you have. So that depends on what kind of business you have, depends on what kind of tax return that you would need to file. So you can set yourself up as 4 different type of, well, there's many, but the 4 that are most common for a studio is sole proprietor, limited liability corporation, which is also an LLC that Barbara was asking about, an SCorp, or a regular corporation. And I'm going to talk about all 4 of those in the next slides. But before we begin, I'm going to do another poll because I'd love to know what kind of entity you have set up for your studio. So let me find the polls. And I'll start this one. Okay, so are you a sole proprietor, LLC, SCorp, CCorp? Are you unsure? And so far it looks like what I was expecting these answers. I'll give you about 10 more seconds. Okay, I don't know if you can see the result or not, so I'll just say them. Sole proprietor, and I'm going to end this poll right now. Okay, so the sole proprietor is 36%, tied with an LLC. SCorp, nobody. I'm a little surprised about that one. CCorp, I'm not surprised that nobody is that. And unsure, 27% of you. And I might have an answer for those of you that are unsure. Let's go on. And let me get back to the chat. There we go. And good job, Jackie. You just barely set up as an LLC. Extra income. Okay, great. Sole proprietor. So if a sole proprietor is the easiest way to set up a business. And it's actually the only thing you need to do to set up a sole proprietor is to just start working. You don't need to file any specific forms with the IRS or with your state in regards to tax purposes. But you do need to file, but you do need to still check to see if you're required to file any licensing or zoning permits. When I say that you don't need to file any specific forms, I'm talking about setting it up as a business. You would still want to, you would still have to file your taxes and your income, show your income and your expenses on what's called a Schedule C on your 1040. And I will show that on the next slide. But some of the benefits for being a sole proprietor, it's very easy to form because you just can automatically become a sole proprietor. It's ease for tax filing because you just have to fill out the one form on your personal taxes, which is the Schedule C. There are some drawbacks though, and that would be a personal liability risk. So if you are a sole proprietor and you are sued, your personal assets, your home, your car, anything that you personally own would be held liable because the IRS sees you and your business as the same entity. So that would be an issue. So if you are a sole proprietor, make sure that you do have that general liability insurance. There are also self-employment taxes. Now this webinar, I'm trying not to have it go longer than 45 minutes, and just talking about specifics like the self-employment taxes would take a few hours to really like delve deep. And that's not what I don't think any of you want. So just know that you would have to pay self-employment taxes. And I think that's around 15.3% or something like that. This is the Schedule C that you would file with your 1040. and going on to the next step, and that would be a limited liability corporation. Essentially, an LLC provides the measure of flexibility that's found in a sole proprietor, but it also combines the fact that you are there's a liability limit on what you could be held liable for in effect if you were sued or audited. Every state has a slightly different set of rules, so just make sure that you follow those rules. Check with your state taxing associations to make sure that you are doing what's required. Some of the benefits for having an LLC, and Jackie, you probably realize that now too, is that it's not too hard to file a form to become an LLC. I'm sorry, my picture is covering the rest of the benefits. It just means ease of flexibility of filing, and it's some of the drawbacks, though. You do still have to pay self-employment taxes, and there are registration fees. Now, when I say that it's easy to file, I'm going to clarify that, because actually an LLC can be set up 4 different ways, and we're going to go through each one of those. If you are the only owner of your LLC, you can still file your taxes on your Schedule C on the 1040. The way I set up my LLC was as a partnership. So my husband and I both own my studio. And so I have to file a partnership tax return, which is a 1065. And so that's a little bit more complex than just filing as just owning your own LLC yourself. I don't know why I put my husband on. So what I did, I don't know. Then there's also you can, if you set up a corporation, the corporation can own the LLC, and then you would file the 1120S if it's a SCorp, or the 1120 if you have set it up as a regular corporation. And again, I know that there's so much that we could talk about that. Okay, subchapter S corporation, or another term that most people would know it as, is an SCorp. So an SCorp is a little bit more complex, and that's actually the way that I have set up my my husband's chiropractic business. We have it as an SCorp. It's a specialized type of corporation that is considered a separate legal entity. So you as an individual and you as your corporation are 2 separate identities in regards to the IRS. So the benefit for having an SCorp is that there is limited liability. So if you are sued or you are audited, the IRS or those that are going after you will only be able to get what the corporation owns, and not your personal assets. So this is a good thing for that. Some of the drawbacks, though, of doing an SCorp is that there are higher formation costs, there are higher registration fees, there's more paperwork when you're filing your taxes, and it's just a little bit more complex. But if you're thinking about growing your studio and having employees, this might be a good route for you. And this is the tax form that you would file for that. This is the 1120S. I've spent a lot of times filling this out, a lot of years filling out the 1120S. So CCorp is another type of organization. It's the higher one, and this is mainly for bigger organizations such as like Walmart or Amazon. The CCorps also have limited liability. They are considered a separate entity from the individual share owners. There are stock options for employees. Some of the drawbacks, though, is that it's called double taxation. So that means that a corporation is taxed separately from the individual, which essentially means all of the profits that the C-Corp is taxed at, and then also the salaries that are paid, as well as the dividends. It's all going to be taxed, double taxation. So This really, I don't think, is a great option for individual music teachers. And from our poll, it doesn't look like anybody was a regular C corporation. So I am happy to see that because this isn't a really good option for us. And this is the 1120. Okay, so I'm going to summarize as far as the different type of entities. And the sole proprietor, it would be a good option for maybe a teacher that has another field, another career. So maybe is doing teaching on the side or just has a few students. Being a sole proprietor might be a really good option for you. If you do that, do make sure that you have that general liability insurance so that if anything happens, that you will be covered up to a certain extent. An LLC is a really good option if you are making music your career. Like if this is something that this is what you are doing to earn a living. I would suggest an LLC would be a good choice for you. An SCorp is a good option for you if you're planning on expanding your business. Let's say you have group classes and you're going to hire some teachers to work for you as employees, then you might consider doing an SCorp. And again, a CCorp, I don't think is a very good option for anybody. So I'm going to look in the chat. We're almost, I just have two more really short slides. And let's see here. Yeah, let's go on. So the next is, I'm actually going to skip that one, go to this one. I'm really excited about this idea. So for many years, I've been trying to figure out what is my niche in life. And I think that my niche is actually going to be combining, just embracing the accounting and the business side and my music together and merge it all into one. And so this July, I'm excited to share that I'm going to start a music studio business academy. In July, I'm going to be launching this at the NCKP conference in July. So what this is basically going to be is I'm going to be offering some courses, step-by-step courses on some of the business fundamentals on how to run a music studio, and also complimentary webinars like this. So going back to my former slide, the next webinar that I'm going to be covering is next month, the next complimentary webinar. It's on community arts advocacy, creating ways to fund your project. And I think that this will be pretty helpful. I've had a lot of teachers throughout the country that have seen some of the things that we've done here in Utah and are interested in maybe applying some of those to fund their projects, whether it was opening up a recital space or bringing in funding for the center. So I know that some of you are on here. I might be actually reaching out to you if you would be willing to be like maybe a guest panelist. That would be really helpful. So thank you so much for all coming today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me anytime. And you should know where to find me because I think I know most of you already. So thanks so much for coming. I'll see you next month.